Hello and welcome to the Ground and Grow podcast. I'm your host, Kayla Estinson Williams. So, for my little update this week, I'm going to talk about the weather again, which I know is maybe a little boring, but I'm a Minnesotan and we are in the end of winter, beginning of spring, and that's just what we do. But I think when I was talking to you all last week, I was talking about how great the weather was and how nice it is to be able to get outside and not have to wear a jacket and how it's really uplifting my mood. And now, as I'm recording this is the first week of March, but yesterday we had the biggest snowstorm of our whole winter. And so just as all of our snow had melted, now we have another 9 or 10 inches of snow. So yesterday was a little bit of a snow day. My husband and I did a little childcare juggling because we were like, we're going to get stuck if we leave our cul-de-sac, which doesn't get plowed out early in the day. It didn't get done until 3 p.m. So we stayed in, juggled things around, did a lot of snow blowing, all of that stuff. But it was kind of fun. The snow is really pretty. And because it was super wet snow, it stuck to the trees a lot. So it was just like that really pretty snow that you see outside. So I'm just appreciating it for what that is. And it was really cool. I think one way that Minnesotans really get together and support each other is when there is a snowstorm, and it's kind of fun looking outside as everyone is shoveling and snow blowing and seeing people help each other out, right? Like I saw someone getting stuck and another neighbor comes over with their snowblower and is helping him get unstuck. And that's always cool to see people support each other in that way. So that's what this week is. And in a couple days, it's going to get 40. I think it's going to be 50s in the weekend. So the snow is going to melt again. It's all going to be mud in my backyard again, which was just starting to kind of dry out. It's okay though. We're doing okay. It's sunny, so I appreciate that. My chickens started laying eggs this spring. They had their winter hiatus and now they're back to laying eggs, or one of them is. So that has been nice. It's been extra nice for my little chicken blanket so I can add in different colors. The first 2 months were all one color, which was my color for 0 eggs. So now it has a little more variety. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to spring and summer. But right now it looks very wintry out. But it's pretty and it's not freezing, so I'll take it. And I'm just not even going to touch on the state of the world and our country because that's been a little chaotic, but just know that I'm stressed and you're probably stressed. And if you need to know that other people are stressed with you, we're in it together. If you haven't listened to my coping skills for stress that's out of our control, that was a couple episodes ago and that might be nice. I need to practice that. But I've been doing a lot of distracting because there's a lot in the news that can feel overwhelming. So I've been doing a lot of distracting with crocheting and doing different projects and stuff. So that's been my life. But now we're all going to distract with a little Reddit story that I will share with you all and bring in some psycho ed. And this one it's going to be a more obvious one, but it's we'll just get into it. So this is from Reddit, and it is titled, "Am I Overreacting for Considering Divorcing My Husband Who Doesn't Want to Be With Me for the Birth of Our Child?" So I, 33-year-old female, he's a 40-year-old male. We have 2 kids together and a third on the way. Just last night, we had friends over for dinner and we're talking about childbirth and what it was like for our first 2. And he said that he didn't even want to be there for the birth of this one because it's too traumatizing for him, and that he wants my mom, who lives in a different country and has Parkinson's, to come be there with me in the delivery room instead. He said he doesn't want to be in the room and deal with my screaming and shouting over and over again because it's too stressful for him. I'm sorry I was in pain having an unmedicated birth to our beautiful and healthy children. He's never mentioned this to me, that he doesn't want to be there for the birth. This is the first time it's come up, and it's in front of other people, which was kind of embarrassing. To be honest, if this were the only issue in our marriage, I would probably chalk it up to just him having a few too many beers and maybe being a bit too blunt about it. But there have been so many other instances that prove to me he doesn't prioritize me, and I'm so sick of it. Am I overreacting? Would I be an absolute idiot to divorce him while I'm pregnant with our third child? Whew. So yeah, I I would also be fuming in that situation, right? And there is just so much sexism and different pieces at play here, right? Like he gets to say that was too traumatizing for me and I don't want to be there, and just throw that in as if it's an easy fix. When for her, it's like, oh, I don't have a choice. And obviously, it was more intense for her because she's the one going through it. If you have not gone through childbirth, you don't know what that experience is like. I know before I went through childbirth, I knew it would be intense, and it was like a lot more intense than I expected, even though things went fairly smooth. So childbirth is intense. It feels intense. It's like one of the biggest things your body will ever go through. So for him to say that that was too traumatizing for him and he doesn't want to be there, yikes, right? And like, it might be different, right? If there was some traumatic event, right? Like maybe there was a previous birth that went sideways and was really scary and maybe almost lost someone in that, right? Like there might be trauma there. And I'm not trying to dismiss the fact that the partner in the situation can be traumatized by that, right? Like I understand there can be really scary moments for either person involved. And this would not be the time to bring it up, right? It would be before deciding to have that third child, right? If there was so much trauma associated with that birth that you didn't think you could be there and be in the room for that instance, or you were fearful of your partner going through childbirth again, that would be a big part of the conversation on, do we want to have a third or not? And if you have a surprise pregnancy, like you should talk about it then, to be like, okay, this is happening and what decisions do we need to make here and how do we like proceed forwards, right? So I'm not saying that just because he was the non-birthing partner that he doesn't get a say in like if it was traumatic or not. I'm not trying to dismiss that, but that is absolutely not the situation happening here, right? It sounds like what he's saying is like, oh, you were screaming too much and you were shouting too much and I don't want to deal with that. That's too stressful. Whew. Like that feels like a big red flag, right? Which I think isn't just, oh, he had a few too many beers and maybe he was trying to make a joke that didn't land. Like that is to me showing some messages or beliefs that would be raising concern, right? Now I'm not saying this person necessarily should like file for divorce tomorrow, but I would say get into a couples therapist office tomorrow, right? Like I would say, like, you know, if this were me, or if this was if I was working with her as an individual client, I would be like, yeah, this definitely feels like a time to invite in some couples therapy. It sounds like from what she's writing here that there have been some other instances that make her feel like she's not the priority or not being considered. And those need to be explored, right? This person who is your partner and the father of your children and your co-parent, right? You want them to be understanding of your experiences and supportive of those. And if that is how he really believes, or maybe he has a very, very poor taste in jokes, which he needs to really work through because there's got to be some underlying beliefs that would contribute to thinking that's a funny joke. It's time to work on that, right? But for this person, kind of getting to this point of contemplating divorce over that, right? Like, I wouldn't say that's overreacting, right? I would encourage, some really talking it through, starting couples therapy, seeing if it's something that you can work through. But it's not just a one-off statement, right? There is something really big to that. And especially if there are some other instances associated with that, that's tough, right? So my psycho ed is going to be a little bit like kind of what to do as a partnership leading up to birth and how to support your partner who is giving birth if you are the non-birthing partner in that, right? And so this really does need to be a team approach, and something that I work with a lot in couples who are preparing to welcome a new child into the family is, hey, let's have a conversation of what hopes you have for the birth experience, right? Not just your birth plan that you might be kind of working on with your medical provider to kind of be like, yeah, what what are my goals, what interventions might be possible with how my pregnancy is going, what ones do I want to kind of be prepared for, which ones am I really comfortable right away for, and which ones do I really want to consider and think about if those needs show up. Obviously, that's great to have kind of prepared ahead of time and talk with your partner about what that looks like. But in this, like a birth plan of how are we going to be a team, right? Because one person is going through the most intense part of that, right? Giving birth, undoubtedly like the most intense part of that. And the partner needs to be there to be that support and be that team member. Now, again, I'm not saying that they don't have a difficult experience either, right? Like it's not easy being a support person in a birth, right? Like there's lots of big emotions. There can be fears for everyone. It's hard to see your partner be uncomfortable and go through tough things. It's sometimes hard to be an advocate, especially if that's not something you're super comfortable with. I'm not saying that is just like easy peasy for the partner, but really looking at, okay, what does this person giving birth need in their partner, and how can the two of you really be a team? So some questions that I might explore with couples. One is like, if there have been any past birth experiences, let's talk through those. Let's talk through what felt really helpful as a team, what feels like there's some room for improvement, what needs can you identify that you might have this time around due to your past experiences. So that can be a nice conversation to explore, not in a way that's going to put anyone down or bring up guilt or shame if it didn't go perfectly, but it was kind of like, okay, we were thrown into this experience for the first time, maybe, or maybe the second time, but we just haven't, it takes practice. We were thrown into that experience. We didn't maybe know exactly what it was going to be like. Here are things that felt great. Here are things that, now that we've tried that out, I want to shift it up a little bit. So kind of exploring, what have we learned that we want to grow into? Or maybe this is your first birth experience. It's going to be a lot of guesswork of, okay, what I know about myself, like that for the birthing person, what I know about myself, like these might be things that I want, right? What might be helpful for my partner? So that might be ways that you want them to just have fun with you, get your mind off of things if you need it, ways that they can support you through contractions or uncomfortable moments, physical pain, like what kinds of things might be helpful there, how they want you to maybe advocate for them to their doctors, to the nurses, midwives, whatever, how you might need support there, because understandably, the person who is giving birth, going through contractions, all of that might have a hard time advocating for themselves a little bit. So having that communication with partner ahead of time of, hey, what do I really want you to put out there and support me on that level, right? So those might be some nice questions to explore, and touching in on just how are we going to communicate about these things in the moment, right? For example, it might be for the birthing partner, like, oh, hey, if something isn't feeling great, or if I want you to shift something, like how can I bring that up in a way where you're going to hear it and know what I'm talking about right away and jump into that? And for the partner who's more of the support partner in the moment, it might be really looking at like, what's my own stuff that might show up that I want to make sure I'm taking care of? So that might be if they have any discomfort about being in hospitals, maybe from past experiences, they might want to work on that or figure out what kind of supports that they need in the moment, right? Ways that they can support their own comfort so that they can be on top of things as much as possible for their partner, all of those kinds of things. So really ahead of time, emotionally preparing for what might show up and how can we really be a team and communicate and support one another, and especially support the person giving birth in that moment, because that's who's going to need it the most. Again, not dismissing the experience of the partner, but I think for the most part we can say, right, excluding like maybe significant past traumas in a hospital or something like that, almost all of the time the most intense experience is going to be the person actually giving birth. So being prepared for that, being a team is huge. Obviously, don't do what this person's husband did and say like, I don't want to be there. You're screaming too much. You're shouting too much. That's stressful. I would say, okay, you can try giving birth, right? Or I'm not going to sign up to give birth with someone who's not going to be comfortable supporting me in those moments, right? So all of that to say, for the psycho ed, prepare, be a team, support one another. Bringing a child into the family isn't just the burden on the person giving birth, which sometimes, right, in our society really feels like, well, because you're biologically going through that process, so much of that burden is already on you. And I think due to like the patriarchy, right, sometimes men might kind of feel like, oh, like then that's your thing, right? And easily push that towards their partner. And so let's start to challenge that, right? This is a team effort. And let's appreciate the fact that your partner is going through the biggest part of it on their own, right? The pregnancy. And I'm not saying they're doing it all on their own, but their body's going through all of those changes. They're dealing with it in so many more intense ways than their partner who's not giving birth. So let's appreciate that. Let's support them in all the ways. And even if this was a joke, not funny, right? Like not okay to say and be so dismissive, especially in front of friends, but ever. And so let's shift to making sure our language and how we're communicating to our partner and how we're communicating about our partner shows that appreciation and that respect it deserves. So I know this is kind of an obvious story on who is in the right or wrong, which usually is not like my approach. I'm not trying to say someone is right or wrong, but in this, we can agree. I know this was on the Am I Overreacting subreddit, but in this example, I would say the husband in there is the AH, the asshole, if it was on that Reddit. And this person is not overreacting for being like, is this a partner I want to continue on with? I'd recommend couples therapy first to really explore. I don't know the whole backstory, but that's where I'd start. And I hope that they do that. Obviously, I don't know them, but I hope they do. So yeah, that's my psycho ed for the day, the story for the day. I hope you all have a nice rest of your week, and I will look forward to checking with you all next week. Bye-bye.